In a year where COVID-19 dominated the news and our lives, the submissions for the 2021 Jackman Award for Excellence in Journalism in the large media category shed light on a variety of critical issues that required public attention and public response. Each submission embodied the ideals of journalistic excellence, including originality, accuracy, and accountability. Once again, we're thrilled to be joined by members of each of these nominated organizations. CTV News Calgary is nominated for The Spread of Racism, a documentary exploring anti-Asian racism and discrimination during the pandemic. From CTV News Calgary, please welcome anchor and video journalist Kathy Lee.
Thank you so much, Janella. I want to start off by saying thank you to the Canadian Journalism Foundation and, of course, to the jury. To be a finalist for the CJF Jackman Award for Excellence in Journalism is truly an honor, and to be in this category for our documentary, COVID-19, The Spread of Racism, is even more special. Asian people are still being racially attacked and discriminated against during the pandemic. After our piece aired, the number one comment that we received from those outside the Asian community was, we had no idea that this was even happening. And I'm proud that we could shed light on this disturbing issue in hopes of bringing more understanding to the public and hopefully bring about change. I want to thank the leaders at CTV Calgary for believing in this project. And I want to thank my wonderful colleagues who worked so hard and were so passionate about bringing this story to life. Thank you.
The Globe and Mail is nominated for its series investigating why Ottawa and the Public Health Agency were unable to respond effectively to the COVID-19 crisis. From the Globe and Mail, investigative reporter Grant Robertson.
Thank you. I want to thank the Canadian Journalism Foundation for recognizing us and all the other reporters this year. It was a remarkable year for journalism in Canada, I think. Our investigation began with a simple question. Why wasn't Canada better prepared for this? We were the country that had SARS, and we saw people die when an emergency couldn't be contained. And we spent years preparing for something like this. And so we began with that question, and when we dug into it, we found that pandemic preparedness plans hadn't been followed. And as we pulled back the layers of that, what we eventually found was the problems inside the Public Health Agency had been festering for close to a decade, and we really weren't prepared to take this on. And people inside the department said, there are problems Canadians don't even realize happened, like the shutdown of our pandemic early alert system. Our warning system was shut down less than a year before. And when we found that out, it led us to a number of other problems, such as the lack of scientists inside the department and lack of support for scientists, which we didn't expect. And if you look at the root cause of this pandemic, the emergency stockpile not being prepared, the lack of risk assessments being effective, the lack of quarantine measures and airport measures, it all comes back to this problem. And we're honored to be here tonight on behalf of myself and my editors and the entire Globe and Mail. We're honored to be honored.
The Montreal Gazette is nominated for exposing the horrific details at a Dorval nursing home where residents were abandoned during the pandemic. Please welcome Montreal Gazette reporter Aaron Derfel.
For more than 2 decades, there have been reports after reports underscoring the horrific conditions in nursing homes. Unfortunately, it took a pandemic to really bring this to light. And the Montreal Gazette was one of the first news organizations early in the pandemic to expose the horrific conditions of neglect among the elderly. In this relatively small nursing home, there were more than 30 residents who died in a short period, 3 weeks, dehydrated, malnourished, soiled in their feces. And as a result of a series of stories, 2 big ones, we were fortunate, this rarely happens, that the impact of a news organization, what we do is occurs so swiftly. But the very next day after the Montreal Gazette's first story ran, the Premier of Quebec, François Legault, he ordered the immediate inspection of 40 private nursing homes in the province. Ultimately, the government hired nearly 8,000 patient attendance to work in long-term care. I would like to thank the efforts of our team, because this is a team effort. Lucinda Choden, the editor-in-chief, Enza Micheletti and Monique Baudin, who are the assistant city editors, our chief photographer, John Mahoney, myself, I was involved. My name's Aaron. So it really is an honor, and thank you very much.
The Toronto Star, with the Investigative Journalism Bureau, part of the Dalla Lana School of Public Health at the University of Toronto, is nominated for Generational Distress, a cross-border collaboration on the mental health crisis undermining a generation of young people. Here's investigative reporter at the Toronto Star and director of the Investigative Journalism Bureau, Robert Cribb.
Thanks so much. Great to be here. Just happy to be in the same virtual room with all these remarkable finalists. This series was a fascinating collaboration, and I think marked a number of firsts. First of all, it's the inaugural project of the Investigative Journalism Bureau, which you may not know of as a newly minted Canadian nonprofit center based at the U of T. And then together with the Toronto Star, the series brought to life a very unique model, I think, that ultimately involved more than 80 reporters, academics, researchers, and student journalists from 10 universities across 2 countries exploring an emerging public health crisis. And there were some tremendous moments of real magic where young reporters from Stanford University to King's College were bringing their valuable perspective, partnering with senior journalists and editors at the Toronto Star, including David Bruiser and Jesse McLean, who brought real ambition and scale and gravitas to this. The real heroes, no question, are the young people and their families who spoke to us often wrenchingly about the lives and too often the deaths of so many young people facing debilitating mental health challenges today. We're tremendously in their debt and grateful to the CJF judges for helping to amplify those voices. Thanks for doing it.
Winnipeg Free Press is our final nominee for A Stain on Our Game, an investigative series on the life and destructive legacy of a disgraced junior hockey coach. Representing Winnipeg Free Press, please welcome Paul Simin.
In our case, what we were trying to do in the midst of COVID coverage was get at a story I think that had never really been fully told, even though newsrooms everywhere had talked about what Graham James had done, his crimes, his trials, and his sentences. And what we really wanted to do was to dig deeper into the scandals surrounding Graham James. And that's what we were able to do in this special investigative project, where we got at a level of accountability that had never been there, and to explain how it was that one man was able to do what he had done for so long, in many cases in plain view, and why people looked the other way. So Jeff Hamilton, our sports writer, tasked with this rather tall order, his outstanding journalism explained the roots of the criminal behavior of Graham James and painted a picture of complicity, or at very least willful ignorance, through all levels of the sport, which allowed James to abuse young players for years. I want to thank Jeff Hamilton for his relentless commitment to this project, and for Associate Editor Scott Gibbons for overseeing it. But more importantly, I want to thank all those who were his victims for trusting us to tell their story and to give voices to the suffering they still endure. My hope with this project and with the public service journalism that is so important today more than ever is that we can make change and ensure that there is accountability, and that no one else who chasing their hockey dream ever has to deal with another Graham James.
Congratulations to each of our nominees for what the jury called a brilliantly detailed account of how the Canadian alert system failed on the eve of the COVID-19 pandemic. The winner is the Globe and Mail. Congratulations.